Taplow, Maidenhead, Twyford and Reading. Platform 3, British Rail apologise for the inconvenience.
Hello, you're watching Everard Junction again, and today it's going to be another layout update. I had intended to be doing part 2 of my suburb scene, but I haven't done too much to it recently. I've been doing too much other stuff. I've done a great deal of work on the layout over the last week or so, I thought it'd be good to show you that while it's fresh in my mind. And there's also a project that I've noticed that's taken my interest, and it may be of interest to you, so I thought I'd better cover that as well, in case you guys do not know about it, because I believe it's only really been published via sort of word of mouth, leaflets at model railway shows, and on RM Web. And if you don't have access or have seen any of those things, then you probably won't know about it. So moving on, I've seen on the internet there's a project going, it's a Kickstarter project going ahead to produce a new model train. Now a Kickstarter project is basically a crowdfunding website. If you've not seen Kickstarter before, it's basically somebody says, hey, if I can get this amount of money, I'm going to make this and you'll all be able to buy it. However, I don't have the funds necessary to make whatever it is, so would you please support me in doing so? And then if the project reaches the amount of money that has been specified as its budget, the projects will go ahead. It's an extremely successful and good way of launching stuff if you do not have the funds available. A lot of recent games for PC and Xbox and PlayStation have been released using that method to start off with. Those games have started off in alpha testing with just Kickstarter backers. There is currently a Class 71 that's going to go into production in 00 scale, and that has been successfully kickstarted from the Kickstarter website, crowdfunded by the public, and that is going to go into production. So another team have taken inspiration for that, and they are going to be producing a Pendolino. Now this Pendolino is an N-gauge Pendolino, so unfortunately it's of no use to me, but I know a lot of you out there model in N-gauge, and if you model the UK and particularly the modern scene, then I imagine a Pendolino in N-scale would be quite high up on your list. They intend to make it properly, you know, doing all of the current, you know, accepted standards of tooling, so it will look awesome. They're currently a few weeks into their Kickstarter project, and I believe it ends sometime in January. And you can go to engagependolino.com, and you can see a shot of it there, where they are currently at the time of filming. And you can go onto their Kickstarter page, and if you're interested in having a Pendolino in N scale, you can pledge from anything up to £1 all the way up to a full-length train. They'll be making all the cars, and they'll be done to the current standards, so it'll be the easiest way to imagine it is probably the detail and standards of the Hornby Pendolino, but in N scale. So if that thing comes to fruition, that will be a very impressive thing to have on your layout. Obviously I model in 00 scale, so not applicable to me, but I thought I'd better get the word out there anyway, and I wish the project all the best. And for those of you that don't know anything about it, take a look at engagependolino.com and see if you can make some history. One of the issues I've been having with the layout the last couple of months, I'd probably say, is storage. As you know, I have my big Fiddle Yard over there underneath, and I have 4 storage spaces per track. So the layout's got 3 tracks, and each track has 4 storage spaces for me to park trains. But more recently, I've got so much stuff that I was having to park stuff in the station. I was leaving lots of locos in the TMD, and although it looked cool, it was very cluttered. But I like it looking like it does now, with just a few locos in it. When it's completely rammed, it kind of, you tend not to look at the scenery so much because it's all blocked by parked trains. So I like to have a more realistic look, and I don't like having loads of stock just sitting around on the scenic section of the layout. A couple of DMUs and things is fine, or maybe the odd passenger train, but I was actually storing rakes of wagons and stuff in the station. So in order to fix the storage problem, I had to initiate plan B for the Fiddle Yard. And plan B for the Fiddle Yard was to build a second Fiddle Yard, which is what I've been doing for the past few days. And as you can see, it is situated underneath the station section of the board here. So if we come over to the original Fiddle Yard, which is underneath this side of the layout, what I did was I took the outermost track, or outermost storage siding for the outer track, and I got some more points, and I laid an extra 6 storage spaces underneath the station board here. The running lines at the back remain unchanged. I've just used the space in front to create these extra 6 sidings, which allows me to store more stuff. So in total now the outer track actually has 10 sidings. I run quite a lot of stuff on the outer track, and a lot of it is quite long, so it's quite handy that it's this particular track that gets the extra storage sidings rather than, say, the branch line or something like that. Here's a look at the other end. You have to excuse all the wiring. I need to tidy up a little bit over here. There's some surplus wiring that is no longer being used, which I need to get rid of. But this is the other end. Get an idea there. One of the sidings is dead end. The way all the point work worked out when I got to this end, I just couldn't get the 6 lines to change into one line in the given space. I could do it with 5, but I couldn't do it with 6. So that siding there, again, it's very long. I put a buffer stop at the end just to prevent any accidents, and that's got the 5MT with the heritage rake, so I actually have somewhere to permanently store those heritage Mark 1 coaches, rather than keep them in a drawer somewhere and have to get them out each time I wanted to run them. Again, I mentioned the HST, that fits nicely back there. It's a 7-car HST with power cars, that gives you an idea of how long that is. And then I've got a 47 and a 50, both with long passenger trains, 6 to 7 coaches. And then there's a 37 sitting in there as well, with plenty of space for all its wagons. And then there is a spare siding in here that has the 37 pulling the steel wagons when it's not running around the layout. And it should actually just be popping up over there. It's nice now, I can actually run that in the length I originally wanted to. There's a lot of wagons on there. You can see how long it is. You can see why storing that lot was a bit of a problem. It took about a week to get all this done. As you can probably appreciate, there isn't a lot of space under here, and laying all the track and getting it all lined up and level and straight and nailed in, and then soldering dropper wires to it, and getting all the point work in, making sure you get all the rails clipped into the fish plates without them riding over. You know, when you clip a piece of track together, sometimes one of the rails will ride over the fish plates and you get a bump and issues. Again, very difficult to do that properly when you're working under here and you've only got 6 or 7 inches of space. So I wouldn't recommend doing this to anyone. If you're going to build a Fiddle Yard, build it to begin with, and don't plonk another layer on top and then decide you want another Fiddle Yard. It's a lot of work, and it is a great deal more hassle than it would otherwise have been. But at least it's done now. Okay, so moving on to other things. I've been doing a little bit of weathering recently. There's some items on the layout that have needed weathering for ages. Most of the stuff I have is weathered, apart from the latest arrivals. But there were a few things I'd had for quite some time that really needed to get weathered. And one of those things was my my Royal Mail Class 128. And I've used pictures to weather this. They really didn't get very dirty when they were in this colour. Usually looked quite smart. So I've kept the nice livery, and it still pops and shines and looks cool, but at the same time it's weathered as well, and it just looks that little bit better. So that's the 128, very happy with it. So you'll see that in a few more videos now. It looks suitably grubby. And coming up on the left-hand helix now is some other work I've been doing. You may remember that I have some mail carriages. They're Mark 1 carriages, and they're in various mail liveries. And you used to see them in sort of mismatched clumps together in the 1980s, and they would simply be transporting mail from one place to another. I used to get really dirty, so I've weathered each one of the carriages. You can see, I don't know how well you can see, but I have painted all of the shut lines in the doors by hand. You can just about see on that last one there. I'll stop it when it comes around again. I painted all of the lines where things like door gaps and seams are, and it just makes them look even better. It took quite a while to weather them, but you can see the gaps where all the doors are. It's all grubby. Same on the red ones as well. Just makes them look a bit more grubby and gives that sort of effect of realism. I looked at lots of pictures of these, and the doors were always being used and lots of mail was being pushed in and out of those doors, and they got really quite grubby in all of the gaps and all of the seams. And then the underframe is just your standard traditional grime, and then obviously I've sprayed some of that up the sides as well, and done a little bit on the roofs. Let's move it forward a little bit. The older liveries tended to get dirtier, obviously, so in the late 80s some of these were still in this colour. This is British Rail all over blue, and some of these got so dirty you couldn't even tell that they were blue, they were just sort of brown. So I haven't gone to that extreme, but I've gone sort of halfway there, and I've made this one look quite dirty and quite sort of unloved and unkept, whereas the much newly painted versions are looking in better condition. And then the blue and grey ones, I've gone for sort of a halfway house mix. Lots of them in that colour appeared on passenger trains, so they are sometimes a bit cleaner. So sticking with the weathering theme for the time being, just brought up one of the scrap wagons that I've been working on. This is one of the completed ones, so I have 7 of these, and I'm still making the loads for the remaining 4. I've used a mixture of weathering powder, airbrushing, brush painting, dry brushing, basically combined all of the weathering methods into one to create a really sort of grimy looking scrap wagon. These wagons are known as SSAs, and they were built by a company that I forget the name of during the early 80s, I think, and they then hired the wagons out to British Rail for use on various trains. Now most of them carried scrap, and they were unloaded by mechanical cranes and grabs and magnets and things like that. There's no facility on the bottom of them to sort of discharge into the floor, so they got beaten about quite a lot, because inevitably the crane operators would have bashed into them, and what they were carrying was quite sharp and nasty and heavy. So even though they were painted in quite a nice sort of bluey greeny colour, after a few years in service many of them weren't that colour at all. Most of them just appear to the naked eye as being brown. Now I haven't quite gone to that extreme, you can still tell roughly what colour this wagon is, but I have done a lot of rust effect on the side using the sponge method. Basically you cut a piece of sponge, you dip it very lightly into some paint or weathering powder, depending on what you want to do, and then you very lightly touch it to the side of the wagon, and you get this sort of stippled rusty effect, which looks really cool. I've also gone around the edges of various joins and welds with black paint to just make it look even grubbier. Painted the wheels, of course, and given all the usual treatment. There's the end of it. Really happy with it. The rest of them look the same, albeit in slight varying amounts. Some are heavier than others, but most of them look the same, and they should make a nice train when the whole thing is completed. The most labour intensive bit of doing these is the loads. It is taking me forever to do the loads on these, purely because it is so mind-numbingly boring. I've managed to do 3.5 wagons so far, but I've stopped again because it's just so tedious. You really have to have an afternoon of doing nothing to get the loads done. What I'm representing here is cubes of scrap. So when various metals of the same type are shoved through a machine, it's all compressed into a big cube and then thrown out the other end of the machine. I've seen some pictures of these wagons carrying these type of cubes, and I think it's quite an interesting concept and an interesting load to replicate. So underneath the cubes there is a false load made of sponge that's painted brown. That comes up to I'd say the second, the sort of big line that goes across the middle, and then there's one layer of cubes. I make the cubes out of kitchen foil, so cut a small piece of kitchen foil, put the piece of kitchen foil in a mould that I've made. It's just some plasticard that's been glued into a square. You put the kitchen foil into the square, and then you put the square into a vise, and then when you do the vise up, it squishes the tin foil into these cubes. And then what I do is I take the shiny cubes out, I put them in a pot filled with a little bit of weathering powder and water, and then what I do is I just shake the cubes around, and that gives you this sort of weathered effect to the cubes. And then the cubes are done and they go into the wagon, but it probably takes about 30 seconds to make a cube, and each wagon probably needs, I don't know, something like 40 or 50 cubes. So it's taking a long time to do this, but I'm really happy with how they look at the end of it. That's going to be a nice train when it's done. Okay, and moving on to another project I've been doing. I've been working on some of the signalling on the layout. I've started to make some more of the control boards, and I've also started to film the how-to video on how I make those control boards and get the signals to work automatically. It's taking a while to film, but it'll get done eventually. It's difficult for me to show you how to do it and also make it easy to understand at the same time. They're not easy. Basically what you're doing in that video is A-level electronics, which is what I studied. Just so happens that you can use the microcontrollers and stuff I learnt about when I was doing those studies to create something that does railway signalling on a budget. So it's going to be difficult for me to sort of make that video easy to understand, and it'll probably be quite long, but I hope you understand it. I hope it's of use to you. I'd like to get it out before Christmas, but we'll just have to see how it goes. So one of the things I've been working on as part of doing the signalling is putting in some signal gantries. The layout, I think, could do with some signal gantries. And Traintronics happen to make a brass gantry, so it's made of metal. It comes in a flat pack sheet. All the pieces are cut out for you, but you have to solder it together. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. Now, the gantry you get out of the box is designed to make a 4-track span, so you have a leg on one side, a leg on the other side, and then you'd have a big span in the middle with 4 signals for 4 tracks. I've modified the kit slightly so that I can make 2 gantries that have 2 signals. It does not come with the signal heads, you have to do those yourself. The ones I've got in here are Burco signals. You can also use Traintronics or Econ or Absolute Aspects or whoever you prefer. But I quite like the Burco signals, so I'll be using them where I can. Quite easy to put together actually. It's the first thing I've ever done in brass. It's soldered together really nicely. The instructions were not great, but I got there in the end, and I think it looks really cool. So this one will be going over here. It'll probably be about there, and it'll be my starter signal for platform 1, and it'll also be a normal 3 aspect signal for the centre track. So with that sitting there, I think that'll look really cool. The train's passing underneath. I did a few extra mods to it. The signalling sort of identification tabs, it doesn't come with those, so I made some. And then the mesh on the side to protect someone who's going down to service it. Again, it doesn't come with those, so I put that on myself. But apart from that, it's pretty much the kit as you see. All the wiring is painted grey to try and hide it, and then the wiring is all hidden inside a drinking straw, which is placed in the recess of the I-beam that you get. You can see that this is an I-beam. There's a recess on this side. On the recess on this side, I just put a drink straw in it, ran the wires up. So it looks fairly well camouflaged. You can't tell that there are any wires up there. And I'm really pleased with it. So I'll be making another one, and I'll film the process of that one. I'll show you me doing that. But having never done these before, I thought I'd have a go on my own first without publishing my efforts. So I'll be getting another one, and I'll probably be doing a 3-track gantry, which will be going somewhere over there, I think. But for now, I've got these 2. So I'm going to get them in. They need some weathering again. Everything needs weathering. But yeah, looking good. So I'll be popping those in over the next couple of weeks. One other little thing that I've done is over on the canal scene, where the pavement was, the concrete. I've put some cork down, some very fine cork, It does need painting, it's a bit bright, so it will be toned down. But just to make the path look a bit more realistic and a little bit sort of gravelly. I knew it was missing something, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And then fortunately for me, Terry from Glebro Junction pointed out in one of the Canal scene videos, said why don't you put some cork or something down to make it look like a gravel sort of path. And then it clicked and I was like, yes, that's exactly what it needs. So I managed to get some that was fine enough, and I think it's made it look a lot better. It just needs painting, obviously. It is a bit bright at the moment. But apart from that, Canal scene is unchanged, and luckily for me, the water is still okay. So this water has now been in place since about August, I think, and it's still here. So I'm glad that it worked. I'm glad that it is still working. Something else I've done, which you may not be able to notice at this stage, is I have painted all of the retaining wall. At the moment it's just grey. I need to do weathering on it and sort out a few bits and pieces, but I've just painted it a sort of greyish colour. It's basically the same colour as it was when I got it, but there were these three sections here. These were a noticeably different colour to the rest of it, and there were places where the joins were and you could see the glue. Now I've painted them, some of the joins have gone completely and it looks great, and there are a couple of areas where you can still see a join. One particular area is over here where there's a gap, so I need to do a little bit of work with the model filler, but it's getting there. Again, I just painted it with a brush and it took absolutely ages and it wasn't much fun, but it does look a lot better now. It's all the same colour, and some of those joints have really disappeared and it looks like one continuous piece of wall. So again, I'll be fixing up some of the joints and making them look a bit better. It will be given some dry brushing and some weathering on certain areas, and once that's done I'll be able to concentrate on putting up the back scene that I've got planned for this section of the layout to run along the top of the wall. Okay, so that pretty much summarises everything I've been doing on the layout over the last 2 weeks or so. As I say, building the second Fiddle Yard took a great deal of time and effort, and it really used up all of my time from working on the suburb scene over there. I have made changes to the suburb scene, I just haven't made enough to make a video out of it yet. The main thing I've done so far is sort out all the lighting. You may remember in the first video on the suburb scene, the lighting was a bit bright in some of the houses, particularly the bottom of the houses. The bottom floor was a bit over bright. The lights are now much toned down, and I've also greatly improved the diffusion of the light throughout the buildings. They look a lot better, but I'll cover that in the next part of the suburb scene.